How many of you are project managers or business analysts or people of that ilk? Okay, okay. And what about the rest of you? You're just, I don't know, the detritus of the company? No, just kidding. No, just kidding. So, yeah, okay. So the rest of you are basically, could be sales and marketing, finance, operations, right? True? Okay. Okay, so I think I should just get started then. We could make this an interactive session, or we could not. That's up to you, really, right? My plan was basically to go through the slides and then leave it up to Q&A, maybe for 15, 20 minutes. So if you're okay with that, then we'll stick with that. Okay. So I have a magic pointer here. So let's see if it actually works, right? Yeah. It's kind of dark. Is there a way to make it bright or something? Or I don't know if is there. I don't know if this works. Yeah, I don't know if it works either. I think it's actually the projector or something that has to be adjusted. But I'm pretty sure you can't see that. But that's supposed to be it's supposed to be a Star Wars theme kind of thing. So, right? So I decided to adhere to that. So really, the CTO of a company is the technology Jedi. Right? He's like the Jedi Master or whatever, right? The technology Jedi Master of the company. So now I have very strong opinions about what a CTO should be. And so, I may not be in concert with a lot of my colleagues, right? Other CTOs. But my personal opinion is that a CTO should be an old fart like me, right? Someone with like 20 years of experience, someone who is like so experienced, they basically have seen it all, right? And nothing surprises them. That's my personal opinion. I'm so old that I went through probably like 50 different languages and 100 different technology platforms, right? So, I don't know, have you guys heard of Rex? Yeah, so that's like 1981 kind of IBM scripting language, right? That's like the precursor to JavaScript, yeah. Okay, so right, so I've seen it all, and the advantage of having that kind of perspective, of being more experienced as a CTO, is that when you see something, you know it's not new. Believe it or not. IoT is not new. It's not new. HTML was invented in 1969. It was called GML. So none of this stuff is new, and so kind of wisdom is part of it, I would say. So if you guys know about shuhari from the Japanese thing, shuhari, no, okay. So basically, that's the path you take to becoming a master. But I strongly believe that. So that's kind of like one of my strongly held opinions, is that a CTO should be someone who's very experienced, and I'll get to why that to me is important as we progress, okay? So basically as a CTO, in the context of a software startup, I think all of you are in software startups, or are some of you in hardware startups? All of you are or considering software startups? Okay. So that's up my alley, yeah. So we'll cover these topics here, right? Market, product, team, and business model, right? Okay. One thing that they'll definitely say when you take classes and stuff, they talk about people and process when you run a company and all that. So these are really like the 4 basic things in a startup that the CTO has to get right, okay? Now, one thing that you'll notice is that market is up there, right? And of course, business model, right? Those are non-technical, right? So one thing that, you have to understand that as a CTO, you are. Okay, another thing I should add is that I have a strongly held opinion is CTO should also have a business degree. Okay, so and I practice what I preach, right? I practice what I preach. So I have an MBA, I have a doctorate also in finance, and I also have degrees in computer science. Right? I practice what I preach. I can do business. I'm just as comfortable in front of the customer, right, or in front of stakeholders as I am in front of, my Mac coding, right? So, and that's why I said a CTO should be a rarefied position, right? That's why I depart from a lot of my colleagues. You know, some people will come from business school. I'm a CTO. I'm like, no, you're not. You're a dipshit. You don't know what you're talking about, right? So it's really the marriage. The CTO is the marriage of technology and business, right? Is Steve Jobs a good CTO? No, he's not, because he's not a technology guy, believe it or not. He was not a hardware engineer. Steve Wozniak did all the work. So I don't consider Steve Jobs a hero of mine. Right? So a lot of people like say, what the hell is wrong with you? You know? I'm like, no, it's not. It's true, right? Apple was Steve Wozniak for the first 10 years, right? That's just the reality. There are great CTOs in Apple. They have backgrounds in business and tech, right? Computer science. Those people I look up to, right? But you never heard their names, right? Yeah. I wonder why. Okay, so as a CTO, basically, you're really in charge of all four, believe it or not. Okay, one truth that I've learned, and I think maybe some of you already know this truth, is that if you're programming the company's software, guess what? You know more than the CEO, right? Because what are you doing? You're designing the business model in code, right? You have to know the ins and outs of it, right? But mostly as a CTO, you'll be overseeing these things: security and architecture, recruitment and retention, maintenance and support, and frameworks and persistence, right? Persistence meaning databases and stuff, right? Not like, what my wife does. No, I mean, sorry. Yeah, I'll leave my wife out. Okay, but basically your real job as a CTO, how you're measured, your KPIs and all this other stuff that they use, right? I don't know what metrics they use nowadays. Maybe 5 years from now they'll have a different term instead of KPI, I don't know. So your main goal is to ship, right? Okay? And get things done and make things happen, right? Because your team, the people that you're leading, right? These are tech people, right? Usually, but it includes business analysts, and sometimes it can include product owners if you're doing agile and stuff. They'll actually be under you. So really, you're leading them, right? So the buck stops with you. You've got to make things happen, right? Because it's not like your architect would say, okay, tomorrow we're going to have this meeting and we're going to launch on Friday. Like, no, he's not going to say that, right? You're going to say that, right? So like in my company, for example, my team is looking to me. When can we launch? When can we do the release? When can we do builds? When can we do this? When can we do that, right? They're looking to me. So let's just take a look at one of these aspects, security and architecture. I'm not going to get too technical here. However, there's one trend that has happened in the last 2-3 years, I would say. How many of you guys have heard of Martin Fowler? One guy. Okay, that's very bad. There's no computer scientists in the room, I know. Yeah. So yeah, but Martin Fowler is one of the tech gurus, like Illuminati or whatever, right? He's actually the chief scientist at ThoughtWorks, and he writes a lot of books about software, which everyone reads in software. Okay. Anyway, except maybe here, I don't know. But anyway, there's been a recent trend in the last 2-3 years towards what we call a microservice architecture. Okay, the company that I'm the CTO at, we're using a microservice architecture. So I'm the one who introduced it, right? So we do a microservice architecture at our company. We have about 12 projects, right? And all these projects are implemented as microservices. And the model is very simple. Basically, you have UI interfaces, right, which are very lightweight. Usually you do them in like AngularJS or Ember.js or some JavaScript framework, some JavaScript MVC or MVC framework, right? Which is completely decoupled from the rest of the architecture, right? So that way you can easily outsource it to some, great fancy UI guy, UI UX guy, right? So the key, before I get too technical or too much into this, is that you want to decouple your layers. So there's a trend now to do complete decoupling so that you can easily do outsourcing, right? But even more importantly, you can easily fix things. So it takes us, in a monolithic architecture, it would take us, because we have legacy code, that we inherited, unfortunately. We're getting rid of it. It'll take some time, right? But if we look at the legacy code, it takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to fix a bug, on average, right? In our microservice architecture, on average, it takes us 2 to 3 minutes to fix a bug, right? So that's a huge win right there, okay? So on the, we have names for the layers, but basically we call it the customer layer. We use different terms, right? The customer layer is anything that's customer facing. It's UI, UX, whatever it may be, right? Whatever the interface is with the customer. And it could be any kind of customer, right? Right? And then we have the so-called middle layer, which is our microservice layer. We call it our service layer. Surprising name, right? And that's what it provides services to the customer, right? And the services interact with each other. So these are small bits of function, right? And they all interact with each other in like weird ways, very complicated communication going left, right. All that communication is done using pure HTTP, REST, and JSON. So at our company, we only speak one language, JSON. That's it. Or JSON or whatever I don't know. I don't like Westerners because the Westerners like, it's JSON, it's JSON. I'm like, I don't care what it is, okay? It's JSON, okay. You want to go ahead and say JSON, that's fine. I don't see an A in there. Okay, so, but anyway, yeah. Okay, sorry. So that's my rant against, okay, JSON. Okay, so, so everything is done in that one language, right? Data format, right? So we speak only one language, data format language, which is JSON, right? We speak really only one protocol, HTTP, REST, right? And so all the communication across all our services is done doing that. So it's so simple, right, to implement. It's so easy to fix, and it's so easy to understand, right? So that's our service layer. And then finally, persistence layer, right? And we have polyglot persistence. What is polyglot persistence? Anybody care to venture an answer? So polyglot persistence basically is, in the old days, you used to have an RDMS, right? You used to have a relational database, right? But in today's world, you have a mix. So nowadays, RDMSs are generally used for reporting. And for the actual transactional stuff, what we call OLTP, right? What we use, right, is a mix of NoSQL technologies. So at our company, we're actually using Riak and Redis and Cassandra. But of course, you can choose anything. You can choose MongoDB or whatever. But the important point here is that how you choose a persistence for your transactions influences the entire user experience. Now, most people don't think about that up front. This is the most critical decision you could ever make. And that's the first decision I made. So before I even wrote a line of code, because I did the API gateway. That's a lot of lines of code, right? But before I did any line of code, right, the first thing I said was, how fast do I want it to be? Right? Do I want to tune it? Right? So that's why I made the decision to go with a particular NoSQL solution, right? Because I knew immediately it was scalable, I knew immediately it was fast, And I knew immediately it had a built-in caching and searching, right? So I thought of these things ahead of time because we knew we obviously would have to search, right? And we're not going to do search using selects, right? So we have to do searching using either Solr or Elasticsearch, one of those search engines, right? Not like Google, I'm talking about enterprise search, yeah, right? Your own data, right? So all of these decisions have to be made up front, way before you even you write a single line of code, okay? The other thing you have to consider is the containers in cloud. So in today's world, again, people generally don't use like one machine and put one thing on it. And then you check the CPU overload, it's like 0.01%. So you're spending 1,000 ringgit for like 0.01%. So that's silly, okay? So, max out the machine, right? Put that thing to hell, right? So basically the idea is that you max out. You do 70-80% on that machine. You load it with Docker images, and you just burn that thing, right? Run multiple instances on it, right, of different services. But the way you should do it is you should replicate. So let's say you have 12 services, right? Have a replication factor of 3. That means if you have, let's say, 5 instances, right? On 3 of those instances, you should have one of those microservices, right? You get my point? So it's replicated 3 times. So you have redundancy, right? And you have speed, right? That's what we do, right? So we have Docker for our images. I think we're probably going to move to CoreOS in the future, which is another container engine. And then we use AWS, right? You could use Azure, you could use Google App Engine, whatever the hell you want. Whoever comes up next, I don't know who's going to come up next, right? But we generally go with proven, Actually, we just choose the cheapest one, to tell you the truth. Because everyone knows that, believe it or not, that cloud is a commodity. Right? Of course, the cloud vendors won't want you to know that, right? But we know that, right? If that weren't true, why would they be having pricing wars? Right? So we just go with the biggest and baddest, right? And so this way you get both horizontal and vertical scalability, because you need both, right? So how do you achieve horizontal scalability? Through multiple instances. How do you achieve vertical scalability? Through containerization. Right? Problem solved. So this problem has been solved, right? Okay, and I talked about REST and JSON, yeah? So everyone knows that stuff. I'm a big fan of AngularJS. That's what we use. So even when we're talking about hybrid mobile apps, we use like AppGyver Supersonic. That's AngularJS. But it runs native on the phone. But we don't have to retrain our employees because they know AngularJS. Right? So we don't have to retrain them. So one thing, to be an effective CTO, another thing you have to consider is what do you have to work with? 90% of the equation is people. 10% is technology. Right? Okay, so you've got to get the right people, and then you've got to support them. Right? So, if you guys have heard about fitness for purpose and fit for, yeah, right? So I think of employees that way too, not just products, right? My staff have to be fit for purpose and fit for use. They have to be useful to the company and to me, right? And they must not run away after 1 year. But a lot of that has to do with me, right? So we also do personality profiling. Like when they join, we do the personality profile, right? We do DISC, right? We basically do this to look for psychopaths and weed them out. I'm not joking, because there's sort of there. And of course, we do code testing. So that's to weed out, the pretenders, right? Yeah, I'm an awesome JavaScript coder. Yeah. Okay. Right? I'm like, okay. So Okay, so, and again, as a CTO or a co-founder, technical co-founder of a startup, right? The onus is on you to find the right technical people. Is that correct or not? Is the CEO going to find technical people for you? No. Okay, so maintenance and support. Okay, so this is where we come into DevOps and continuous delivery. Okay, so in today's world versus yesterday's world. In yesterday's world, how did it work? 6 months, you do a build, release. Next 6 months, do a version increment, release, right? That's stupid. Okay, so in today's world, right, continuous delivery, right? I could pick up my phone now, press a button, and then navigate to our site, and the version will be incremented and everything will be committed and built across our instances. Okay? One button deployment. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay? That means we can build at any time. Right? Well, of course, that means that when people commit code, obviously, there can't be any compilation errors, right? So you have to make sure, obviously, that your ship is tight, right? That people, make sure that they only commit code that is sufficiently unit tested and things like that, right? Obviously, you can have bugs, but you should never have compilation error. I mean, you should be able to build at any time. Okay? Am I making sense here or no? Is this like going over the heads of people? Right? That guy's sleeping. I know. So I'm not sure if he's sleeping because he's tired or he's bored or one of the. But yeah, I mean, if I'm going over the heads of people, you can stop me and say, what the hell is going on? I don't understand a word you're saying. Right? Okay, DevOps is the combination of development and operations. In the old days, the development was separate from the operations. So what would happen was the developers, right, would commit their code, and then the operations people, right, would take it and deploy it, right? But in today's world, a developer can press a button and it gets deployed automatically. There is no operations, really. So what is operations actually doing, right? Operations is dealing with what they should be dealing with. Like instances get corrupt or, machines blow up or something, right? So they're dealing with the real stuff, right? Okay? Yeah, if you have any questions, just ask. Because I'm making some presumptions here, which may be wrong. Okay. So at our company, we use Ansible, Vagrant, and Jenkins, right? And of course, Docker and stuff like that. So what do these things do? They allow you to script deployment. Okay? So what is DevOps all about? It's about scripting deployment, automating deployment. Okay? Okay, so frameworks and persistence, right? I had to make this a little bit light because I couldn't see the images. And yeah. So anyway, Han Solo was very persistent, after Leia, right? So that's why that's there. Okay, so that's okay. You guys are not paying attention to the pictures, they're very good. They're fit for purpose, right? Okay. So at our company, we use Play framework, which is a Java framework, but you can write in Java or Scala, right? Why did we choose it? Simple, performance benchmarking. It's the best, right? So we go with the best, the fastest, right? Of course, now there's a lot of competitors like Vertex and everything. You can use those, But generally, I'm a Java guy, so I tend to focus on performance benchmarking, so we see which one to choose. So that's why we chose this instead of Spring MVC, which tended to be the most popular one. But I'm not a big fan of servlets, so that's the main reason why I chose Play. And we have Node.js in our stack for limited applications. React, Cassandra, and Redis are our persistence, among our persistence, right? So Redis we use for Max Money, do you guys even know what Max Money does? Yeah, I should have said that. So Max Money is a money services company. You guys go to Money Changer, right? Correct? Bolila, right? You go to Money Changer, right? Okay, so you go. Now the ringgit is horrible, right? But if you're working in Singapore, it's really good, right? You get 3.04, right? Ringgit, pretty good, yeah. So, so all of our rates, right? We get real-time rate quotes, and we update our boards throughout all our branches and our online instantaneously. And it all happens in real time, right? And Redis is what allows us to do that, right? Riak is where we actually store our transactions. And Riak has built-in search. So it has built-in Solar. So we don't need to do anything. It just automatically works. Or a lot of people like to use the word automagic. Automagically works, right? I hate that word. I hate buzzwords, right? No, sorry. Anyway, yeah, I'll use buzzwords then. And then Cassandra. So Cassandra is part of our machine learning stack, okay? We have something called risk assessment as a service. What that does is it does real-time fraud detection and reconciliation. So if you're a bad guy, we can find you out in real time, right? The way for that to happen, right, is you have to use real-time ingestion and machine learning, right, and then reporting through Cassandra, okay? Patent pending. So how is the CTO different from a developer, right? Is a CTO a glorified developer? Yes or no? What is your opinion? Do you think a CTO is a glorified developer? Yes or no? Who says yes? Okay, so okay, so the answer is yes, it is. Yeah, I see you. That was a trick question. No, I mean, a CTO is basically, yes, he is a super developer, right? And he also has a business kind of background as well, right? But that's why I said, that's why I'm opinionated. The developers look up to me. I don't look up to them. And that's the way it should be, right? I'm old, right? And I should know stuff because I'm really old, right? So that's the way I think about it, right? So when I was their age, right? When I was their age, if I had a manager who was technically illiterate, I'd be pissed off. And I'm sure they are too, if they encounter someone like that, right? So respect is the most important thing, okay? Believe it or not. And this is not about, hubris or, arrogance or anything like that. This is just about you put in the time over many years, you learn everything, right? Because you've just experienced it. Now you have to share it with other people, right? Okay, so the CTO is the decision maker for all things technology in the company. How am I running for time? Because it's 12:15, right? Till 12:15, right? So maybe I stop at 12, right? Okay. So CTO versus developer, blah, blah. So the CTO is the decision maker for all things technology in the company, and the buck stops, right, with the CTO, right? So all the technologies that we chose within the company, I chose it, right? I was the sole decision maker. Building out the business, right? Obviously, you should know the strengths and weaknesses of the people you're working with. That's where disk profiling comes in handy, right? Keep the macro meta view. Why are we doing what we're doing, right? If when I'm programming, right, I'm in the micro view, right? Like the other day I was writing the rate limiting algorithm, a sliding window rate limit. So think about that, right? You're doing this stupid thing, right? And then you're completely ignoring that, hey, we're not going to be able to launch for like 3 months. So you have to keep the macro view there as you're doing work, right? You're always thinking about things, right? You have to make yourself unnecessary. So now that's the opposite of what I just said, right? So what does that actually mean? What that means is you are there, right, to groom your staff, right? You want them, right, to be like you so that you don't need to be there. That's actually good, right? That concept, by the way, is called fungibility, right? It's a very important concept in Agile, okay? So yeah, we do practice Agile, as most people I think do, right? We do Scrum and Kanban. Kanban we do for customer service stuff, right? Because it's event-based. And then Scrum we do for projects, right? Eventually we'll move on to lean product development, right? But again, you have to look at the team. The team I'm working with is not as experienced, right? So technology is an enabler, not the goal. Yeah, don't fall in love with technology, please. It's just a tool, okay? That's why I said, and now I'm going to go back to my first point, that's why I think all CTOs should have a business degree, right? Because then they realize that life is not about technology. Life is about people and making money, right? And technology is just an enabler, right? Architect the business as much as the product and the technology, right? Have you guys heard of Conway's Law? Conway's Law? No? Yes? Conway's Law? Okay. Okay. I think we have to do a lot of seminars. There's like a huge gap, right? Okay. So basically, the law says that the way you write software or you do technology or anything is a reflection of how you communicate in a company. So your communication structure dictates your software. Well, be careful. Yeah. Right? Okay, that's what it says. And so, of course, this is like, it's a proposition. It's not really provable, right? And I don't think a lot of companies would lend themselves to such a study anyway. Right? Yeah, our company sucks because we live in silos. Here you go. Here's our data, right? So companies are not going to expose that, but really, you're right. If you're in a company where it's very siloed, the software will be siloed, right? The interfaces will be shit, and it'll look like shit. The code will look like shit, right? And that's true because I've worked at a lot of companies, I've consulted for a lot of companies. The software is shit, right? 90% of it is shit, right? And that's an unfortunate truth, right? But it's a reflection, really, on top management and how they choose to communicate, right? Okay, so what are some of the key tasks as a CTO, right? Obviously, you have to manage the DevOps team, right? Meaning development and operations. Hiring, road mapping, shipping, all the regular stuff, right? So, I have like nice roadmaps, like with the Google colors there, so it looks nice. And, yeah, okay, right? You have the milestones there, like when you want to ship releases, right? You manage the business, outsourcing, delegation. Actually, vendor management is something I haven't covered, and I don't have time to cover anyway. But vendor management is really important, okay? One of the worst things you could ever have is that not in my backyard kind of mentality or whatever. Or, if it wasn't invented here, it's not important. Those type of mentalities are effed up, and they'll screw you, right? You should focus on what you're good at, and you should not be ashamed to admit that you're not good at other things, okay? So I'm not good at UI UX, whoop-de-doo, right? So I'll get someone else to do it, right? What am I good at? API design, right? Okay, so I'll do that. And I'll let my other staff do something else, right? But obviously, you want them to learn different things. I mean, I do UI UX. I just suck at it, right? It's not that I don't do it, right? Okay, so that's another thing. And delegation, yeah, delegation is important, right? Right? You have to trust people, okay? That's a problem a lot sometimes. But if you hired them properly, right, then you should be able to trust them, right? Because that's where the support part comes in. Otherwise, they leave, right? Remember fitness for use, yeah? No warranty on the employee, right? So yeah, key tasks, right? Continuing it. So managing technology, we've got coding, operations, office IT, and budgeting. Budgeting, yeah, you have to do budgeting. Hey, that's where the business degree comes in handy, right? Right? So, not that you need to get a, cost accounting degree or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying at least know how to do, profit and loss, balance sheet, inflow, outflow kind of stuff, right? Managing product, knowing the market, the business model discovery. You guys know about the Lean Startup? Eric Ries. I think everyone knows that book, right? Now, well, at least you know that book, so that's that's gratifying. I was getting scared there. Okay, so in that book, basically, he introduces the concept of pivoting, right? In other words, treat your company like an experiment, right? Sometimes that's okay, because if you have money to burn, but I'm saying that, the idea here is that you really don't know what people want. No matter how many market surveys you do, the truth is you really don't know what the people want. So go out and try it. Try something small, right? Something significant but small that would give you the data you need to do something else, right? Or to improve on that thing if it's good, right? And then adapt continuously, fail fast. So that's all part of the lean startup kind of thing, right? Fail fast. Unfortunately, people don't learn fast sometimes. They fail fast, but they don't learn fast, right? So yeah, learning obviously is important, right? Yeah. Okay. So pragmatic. Okay. So this is again where I say that having a business background is important, right? A lot of developers I work with, they're perfectionists, right? So they're sitting there with that refactoring that code for like 5 hours. I'm like, what are you doing? That thing is good enough, right? You can refactor after we release. Just do a patch release later. No big deal, right? But there's no pragmatism there, right? So you gotta live with that. But that's where you have to instruct them. You have to teach them, right? You have to teach them. It's not about you, right? It's about the team, the product, the market, the customers, right? You should get lost, really. You're not important, right? Your importance is basically your ability to make your team productive. That's your importance. Unless you're on the team in programming, then it's a little bit more complicated, right? I'm in the latter camp, so I do programming too, right? So it becomes quite interesting. Sometimes the answer is less technology, not more, right? So a good example of this is in our company, we had a proposal, right? We had a proposal to get kind of a service where you could scan like all these different kinds of ID cards from different countries, and it would recognize it and things like that, right? And it costs money and things like that, and then you have to worry about maintenance and deployment of these devices. I said, "What the hell are you doing? Just take the freaking card and freak the number and enter it in." So, there's no need to make it like so complicated, where the cost of maintaining it far exceeds just the cost of doing that service. Right? In other words, you should only do something if there's actually a monetary benefit. if you have cheap labor, do you want to spend money on billion-dollar robots? You know? GM did that in the 1980s, man. It didn't turn out too well for them, you know. Right, yeah. Anybody see that movie by Michael Moore about GM? It was in the 1980s, long movie. I'm old, so I know. Yeah, that's why I said being old is important, right? Okay. No, it's not. Okay. Okay, so communication, right? Communication is, I would say, 99.9999%, maybe 5 nines, of running a department, right? Okay? If you're not a good communicator, forget it. You know, everything else breaks down. I'm actually a teacher too, you know. I taught at some of the universities here. So, you know, one thing that I used to ask my students is, what is software development most like? Is it like a profession, like law and medicine? Is it like engineering, like civil engineering or something? Is it like screenwriting? And then I chose another one too, some dumb one. I don't know what it is. Waiter, like, you know, is it like that? It's like a service industry, right? Fast food. So a lot of them would choose civil engineering or something like that. Now you're all wrong. Software development is screenwriting. The best developers actually have a background in English literature, right? And when you read their code, it reads like a narrative, right? And the comments are really clear, right? Those are the best coders, right? It can be in any language. It doesn't have to be English. But whatever language it is, you're good at it, right? So those are the most effective coders I've found, in fact, right? Just by looking at open source code, you can see that. Like some of the Apache code is just shit. You go inside that HTTP, you know, utils and components, it's horrible. It's horrible. But I know because I could see the name and like this guy doesn't know. It's not good at communication. So communication is critical not only to writing good code, but obviously to conveying your thoughts, right? If you can't explain to somebody what you want, right, in simple words, so communication doesn't mean you use big fancy words, right? That's not what it means. It means you use simple words in the right way, right? So all of you go home and buy Chicago Manual style, right? So learn how to communicate in very simple, effective, concise language, okay? The simpler the words, the better. I get emails, and the email is like, heretofore, please find until hitherto this stuff. Like, what the hell is this shit? You know, it's when I send an email, it's like, here's my file. That's the email. Here's my file. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So please, you know, an appeal, you know, to all of you. Please just use simple English or simple whatever it is, right? Bahasa, whatever it is, right? Okay, what you don't want to do is probably what you need to do, right? We always want to avoid the hard things, right? So what I do is I deliberately move all the hard and risky things to the top of our backlog. Yeah, right? So we tackle all the hard stuff first, right? And we break it down into as many pieces as we can, right? Okay, so I think I'm pretty much near the end, right? I'm not sure if I'm near the end. I think so, almost. Well, anyway, I'll just hurry up through this. So how do you learn to be a good CTO? A lot of people will ask this question, right? How do you learn, right? So one thing obviously is, you know, there's people around you, right? Some of them are smart. Talk to them. Okay, that's where communication helps. Right? Yeah. Next is books, right? So when I was young, And I'm talking about like when I was in high school, right? I was reading Peter Drucker. No one was talking about Peter Drucker in my high school, right? I learned nothing in high school, right? What I learned was Peter Drucker and, and Deming and all these, people. Just by reading a few of their books, I really got an understanding of what business is really about, right? Venture hacks and all this other stuff like this, right? Yeah. And just do it, trial and error, right? Just take something out, try it out. If it sucks, move on to something else, right? So that's what I did. Like I learned Ruby on Rails, a long time ago, right? Almost when it first came out, and I said, oh, this is pretty cool, and it's kind of like Python, but I don't have to worry about indentation or something, and yeah, it looks nice. Okay. But then after a while, I said, nah, performance-wise, it's not so good, The single-threaded kind of compiler was not so good. So there's like one guy working on it, like, I don't know, So I moved on. So I moved to Scala, right? Scala or whatever, right? So that's what whatever you like, whatever's your fancy, do that. And you don't listen to other people. If someone says, oh, Python sucks, why are you using it? Say, F you and I like it. That's what you say, right? No one goes around and says, why are you speaking Hindi? Hindi sucks. Speak Telugu or something. Right? Languages exist for a reason, right? So what matters is how effective you are in that language, right? That's what matters. Okay. So yeah, this is a good slide because, Darth Vader is learning the business of running an empire, right? So you got to learn the business from the emperor, right? The CEO, right? So learn the business, whatever that business is. So for me, for example, I had to learn about, money services, so Forex markets and crap like this, Fortunately, actually, I already had a background in it. But still, you got to learn, right? You got to learn the business. Because if you know the business inside out, you don't need to talk to anybody to come up with new services. You don't need to talk to anybody. And you're in the best position to create those services, not the CEO. You are, right? Because remember, he's thinking top down. You're thinking bottom up. Okay, focus on collaborating with people outside. So, right? The people collaborate with the Ewoks to bring down the Empire. Right? I'm old school retro Star Wars, before your time. Yeah. Right. Okay, so right? So the idea is that the answers don't all lie within the IT department, right? A lot of the answers lie outside. You need to go out and find them. Right? I'm inspired by Uber and all these other companies to come up with new services. Okay, so yeah, I think this is it. Conclusion, right? Market product team model, architect the business. It's mostly about people. Experiment, pivot, repeat, right? And I'll end with this quote. Yeah, I'll end with this quote. Okay, so by my favorite author. Who's my favorite author? Peter Drucker, right? Peter F. Drucker, right? Unfortunately, it didn't, I don't know why it showed up like this, but anyway, right? So basically, people grow according to their own expectations of themselves, right? If you think you suck, yeah, you're gonna end up sucking, right? If you think you're good and you're arrogant, you're gonna end up sucking. If you think you're good and you're humble, you're gonna end up winning. Okay, it's that simple. Words of wisdom. Okay, that's it.
Do we have questions?
Oh yeah, the questions, Q&A. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Any questions from the crowd?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so this is what we do, okay? What we do is we take a survey of the universe of technologies. So what we do is we categorize them first, right? So we categorize the UI frameworks. We categorize the persistence options, or I don't know, I don't want to call them databases, but whatever you want to call them, right? Persistent stores, we categorize that. We categorize all the service frameworks, right? And then we methodically go through and we look at the benchmarks, what people's opinions are of them, right? And we just don't take any flake guy who's like, a pimply geek guy living in the basement of some home in the Midwest or something. Yeah, we don't take his opinion very seriously, right? So we're looking at people, in Silicon Valley, in the MIT corridor, and Boston corridor, people like that, right? Important people who have something to say, right? And we take a look at what their opinions are. And that's how we choose, right? But generally, there's a lot of articles in the business news which tech people don't read. And those articles actually give you clues as to what you should be using, believe it or not. So for example, if you look at MyTaxi, right? MyTaxi uses Redis for in their stack, right? So another thing is you just ask, hey, why are you using Redis? What are you using it for, right? Okay, so it's a combination of all this, right? I hope that answers your question.
Do we have any more questions?
Wow, okay.
Do you want a mic?
2. Yeah.
I'm actually not from IT background, but just want to know what do you look for when you want to hire a CTO or you want to get a technology partner, and where is the best place to get them? Thanks.
Okay. My favorite topic, recruitment, yeah. Okay, I use LinkedIn. Okay, I tried the other ones; they all sucked. Now, the problem is that there have been several efforts throughout the years to get a network going, right, where you could have trustworthy and reliable hires, IT hires, right? There have been attempts to do this, right? But they've all failed. I don't know why, but they've all failed. And a lot of them originated from Silicon Valley, and they failed. So, see, if you look at Silicon Valley and all this other stuff, see, all the people there are congregated. And so it's very easy for them to interact, right? But that's not necessarily the case in other places, right? And so that's why you get companies there, because it's so easy to interact, right? But forums like this allow people, to interact, right? So the most important thing, I'm sure you know, is 90% of communication is what? Nonverbal, right? So if I don't interact with you, I don't think I'm going to trust you too much. That's why I hate Facebook so much. I hate Facebook. Okay. Anyway, I'm developing a competitor to Facebook. You know that? It's the un-Facebook, right? But yeah, I think actual interaction and getting to see people and interact with them, hacking with them, things like that. That's what allows you to trust someone. There's a difference between trust, okay, and reliability. Do you know what the difference is? Okay. So trust, right? Basically, reliability, right, springs from trust. When you have that initial trust relationship, right, you then will have an expectation of reliability. And generally, that reliability expectation will be fulfilled, right? But if it's a very formal relationship, right, reliability can erode and trust can erode, right? If you just look at the biographies of all these founders, these people are friends. They know each other. They trust each other. Because they know that when it comes time to arguments, and there will be arguments, it's not going to be a deal breaker, right? So, yeah. I don't know. There's no way to really answer that question. I mean, like for me, for example, if I were to find a partner, a co-founder, I would probably be spending years, going to hackathons and all this other stuff. I wouldn't just magically say, I'm going to start a company. Yeah, no. I would be, for 3 years, I would be, going to these places and trying to find good people, right? Sometimes you just get lucky, Yeah. I don't know about because again, I don't know how reliable these stories are. Like, Sergey Brin and Larry Page and stuff. I don't know how reliable that is, right? They just met each other. Hey, we're friends. Let's start Google. Yeah. I don't think it happened that way at all, right? Okay. I think there was another question.
Last one.
Hello, my name is Hafiz. I'm a web designer, not yet a CTO. And on the earlier point you mentioned about as a CTO you need to become unnecessary. So can you elaborate more about that?
Okay, so basically that's a concept of what we call fungibility, right? Fungibility basically means that in Agile we have this thing called information radiation. So what that means is that different people from different backgrounds share what they're doing. And over time, you get to learn what they're doing, right? So that if they're not there, you could actually do what they're doing. Not as well as they can do it, probably, but you can do what they're doing. So that's what I mean by being. Basically, what we're doing is we're grooming, right, people to work on their own, to be independent, to be self-organizing, right? That's what we really mean, to be unnecessary, right?